My world crumbled when I found out the truth my wife had hidden for 14 years. Our entire family shattered in an instant. I'm struggling to figure out what to do next. How could she keep this secret? My wife's 14-year secret has broken our family. I'm lost and in need of advice. My entire world has gone to shit, and I'm urgently hoping that someone out there can help me make sense of it. I am a 35-year-old male. I've been married to my wife, 37, for 11 years. We have a lovely 7-year-old daughter who is the light of my life. Up until last year, I felt we had everything. You know, the picture-perfect family thing? Yeah. It turns out that was all a lie. So this is the bomb that blew everything up. My wife has cheated on me. Not recently. No, this happened long before we got married. But get this. I only learned about it last year. 14 fucking years of lying. 14 years of assuming I knew who I was married to. I am not going to lie. I am a wreck. 1 minute I'm furious. The next thing I know, I'm so depressed that I can barely breathe. And then there are times when I simply feel numb. I feel as if I am watching someone else's life break apart. I have tried everything. Therapy, marital counseling, you name it, but nothing is working. When I look at my wife now, all I see is a stranger, a liar, and it kills me because I remember the woman I fell in love with. Now I'm facing a divorce. Mai is trapped in the eye of this shitstorm, and I'm frightened that I'll ruin her life forever. But I can't keep living this way. I guess my question is, how the hell do I move forward? How do I protect my child from all of this? Is there any way to regain trust after something like this? I am lost. Reddit, completely and absolutely lost. But I'm also motivated to work it out for my daughter, if nothing else. So please provide your best advice, experiences, or anything else. I am all ears. Thank you for reading so far. It means more than you realize. Edit, Guy. Looking back on how it all began, it feels like I'm watching a cliched romantic comedy. You know, the kind when everything is just sunshine and rainbows. I met Christy, not her real name, during my final year in college. She was a bright-eyed junior with a giggle that could light up any room. We began hanging together, initially as friends and eventually as something more. It seemed as if we had suddenly clicked. We could talk for hours about anything. She had a way of making even the most mundane topics appear intriguing. And don't get me started on how stunning she looked. After I graduated, we decided to try long distance. It was not simple, but we made it work. When she graduated 1 year later, it simply made sense for her to move in with me. We were young, in love, and ready to face the world together. 3 years after her graduation, I proposed when I went down on one knee. Before I could finish speaking, she burst into tears. It was perfect. The wedding was tiny yet stunning. Only our closest friends and relatives. Christy gazed. God, she looked amazing. I recall thinking I was the luckiest guy in the world. We waited a few years before trying for children. We wanted to be more financially stable, perhaps by buying a house first. We were overjoyed when Christy became pregnant after a long wait. Lily impacted things in a positive manner, you know? Suddenly, the entire universe whirled around this small being. Christy was a great mother from the start. As Lily matured, our lives fell into a comfortable rhythm. We both had solid jobs. We purchased a wonderful home in an excellent school district. We had a terrific set of friends on the outside, and we probably looked like the perfect family, like those ridiculous stock images, all smiles and flawless hair. And for the most part, it felt that way. We were pleased. At the very least, I was happy. I assumed Christy was the same way. But last year, everything changed. And now, thinking back, I can't help but wonder if everything was a lie. It began with a phone call. Lisa is Christy's old college friend. I had met her several times over the years. Nice chick. He always appeared to be a little overly sensitive. Apparently, she'd had a religious awakening, had recently begun attending church, and had refocused her life on it. Christy informed me Lisa wanted to meet up, and I didn't think much of it. They drifted apart over time, yet they occasionally hooked up. So when Christy returned home that night looking like she had seen a ghost, I was concerned. She brushed it off, Lisa said, was simply being dramatic about something. I should have pushed harder. I should have recognized there was something wrong, but I didn't. 1 week later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Lisa. She asked if we could meet and claimed she had something important to tell me. Something about Christy. I met her in a downtown coffee shop. As soon as I saw her expression, I knew she was going to say something horrible. She couldn't look me in the eyes at first. She just sat there, fumbling with her coffee cup and murmuring something about sin and forgiveness. Christy had cheated on me while we were starting dating, around 4 months in. She went on a girls' trip with Lisa and a few other friends. I remembered the trip. Christy returned tanned and joyful, full of stories about their beach exploits. One of those escapades had her hooking up with a local boy for a one-night stand. Lisa claimed it meant nothing. Christy had been drinking. The guy was cute. It's just happened. It happened as if it were an accident. It was as if she had tripped and landed onto some dude's dick. I did not want to believe it. I kept telling Lisa that she was mistaken and that Christy would never do such things. But the specifics were overly precise. The name of the bar they'd gone to, Christy's blue dress, everything, including the guy's name. Lisa claimed she had only recently worked up the courage to tell me, said the guilt had been eating her alive since she discovered God. She begged me not to tell Christy what she told me, said she was only doing this because she believed I had a right to know. I don't recall the drive home. Next thing I knew, I was standing in our kitchen, staring at Christy as she prepared dinner. She looked so normal, singing a pop song while stirring a pot of pasta sauce. Lily was sitting at the table, coloring and talking about her school day. It was as if I was viewing our lives through a distorted lens. Everything looked the same, but it felt completely wrong. I waited until Lily was in bed. Christy must have noticed something was amiss because she kept giving me worried looks when she finally asked what was wrong. I've just lost it. I confronted her in our living room, explaining everything Lisa had said. I was yelling. I think my hands were shaking so bad I could barely stand straight. The look on her face. God, I'll never forget it. It was like watching a mask crack for a second. She tried to deny it, but she's always been a terrible liar, and she knew it was pointless. She broke down crying, begging me to let her explain. Said it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that she'd wanted to tell me so many times over the years, but was too scared of losing me. I couldn't stand to look at her. I couldn't bear to hear her excuses. I grabbed my keys and walked out. Spent the night driving around aimlessly, trying to make sense of it all. When I came back the next morning, Christy was a mess. She'd obviously been up all night crying her eyes out. She tried to hug me, but I couldn't just. The thought of her touching me made my skin crawl. We sat down and she told me everything, how it happened, why she did it. She swore it was only that one time, that she'd never even thought about cheating. After that statement, she'd learned how much she loved me, how close she'd been to losing me. And you know what the worst part was? She had the arrogance to pretend it wasn't significant. Now that we'd been happy for so long that we had a family, a life together like that made it okay. Somehow I wanted to forgive her. Kept telling myself it was so long ago that we established a good life together. Since then, that one error shouldn't erase 14 years of bliss. But every time I glanced at her, all I could see was that 22-year-old girl sneaking around behind my back. All I could think of was how she'd lied to me every single day for 14 years. I tried to push through it, told her we'd work it out somehow, but inside I was dying. Every smile felt strained. Every touch made me want to scream. Lost weight, started having panic episodes. Worst of all, I couldn't look at Lily without wondering whether Christy had ever cheated again, if Lily was even my. God, I loathe myself for even considering it. But I couldn't help it. I surreptitiously had Lily's DNA tested, as well as myself, for STDs. The relief when the tests came back clear was immense. But that didn't solve anything. This didn't erase the reality that my entire world had been turned upside down. Naturally, Christy saw the change in me. How could she not? I was a shell of the man I once was. She kept attempting to talk to me and make things right. But she always caressed me and said, "I love you." It felt like a knife in my stomach. I began sleeping in the guest room, explaining to Lily that it was due to my snoring, as seen by the look on her face. She sensed something was wrong, even if she didn't know what. That killed me more than anything else. Weeks stretched into months, and things only got worse. I started staying late at work just to avoid getting home. When I got home, I would lock myself in my study, pretending to work. Christy suggested counseling. I agreed primarily for Lily's sake, but sat there listening to Christy discuss our relationship and future felt like a joke. How could we have a future if our past was based on lies? I truly tried. I went to individual treatment and couples counseling, even looked at weekend marriage getaways. However, nothing helped. The trust was gone. What would we have had without trust? It had been a year since I found out. A year of pretending, going through the motions, and witnessing my marriage, family, and entire existence fall around me. And now, I'm not sure what to do now. I look at Christy and feel nothing. No love, no hatred, only nothingness. I can't live like this any longer. I can't continue to pretend for Lily's sake. I believe it's over. It's really over. But the prospect of dissolving our family, of putting Lily through a divorce, is ripping me terribly. How did we get here? How did we get from the joyful couple at the coffee shop to here? Sometimes I wish Lisa hadn't told me that I could have lived in blissful ignorance. I do not know what to do. I'm not sure what to do next. All I know is that I can't continue to live this lie for my own sake, and Lily S. I am hoping someone out there has gone through this, has some insight to impart. Update 1. It's been a year since I discovered Christy's adultery, and I finally made a decision. I am planning to file for divorce. I did not come to this lightly. God knows I've tried everything to make it work. However, after months of treatment, counseling, and long nights of soul-searching, I've learned that there is no turning back. The trust is gone. What is left if there is no trust? I understand what some of you are thinking. It was 14 years ago, Guy. Get past it. Trust me, I tried, but it's not that easy. Christy considers it old history. For me, it feels like it occurred yesterday. Every time I look at her, I notice the 22-year-old female sneaking around behind my back. I see the woman who could lie to my face for 14 years, and I can't get over it. There are many reasons. 2 explanations have established during the last year. 1, the act of lying. It's not just the first lie, but the years of lying that followed every opportunity for her to come clean, which she declined. That is not an error. That was a calculated decision made hundreds of times over 14 years. 2, the robbery by choice. If I'd known then, I'd have ended it. I was prevented from making an informed decision regarding my own life, my personal future. That is not something I can simply forgive or forget. 3, dismissal. When she finally confessed, she attempted to downplay it. It's not important anymore, she continued, as if my thoughts and sense of betrayal were invalid because they occurred so long ago. This hurt almost as much as the cheating itself. Regarding the intimacy concerns, since learning the truth, I have been unable to be intimate with her. The thought of touching her makes my skin crawl. I've tried, trust me, but my body seems to reject the concept. That isn't how any of us wants to live. 5, the effect on our family. Lily has picked up on the tension and distance between us. She began getting nightmares about behaving out at school. We are not doing her any favors by remaining in this hazardous environment. 6, my personal mental wellness. I'm not who I used to be. I'm always angry. I'm depressed, worried, and can't sleep. Cannot concentrate at work. I despise the fact that I am becoming someone I do not recognize. So last night I sat down with Christy and informed her. I've been speaking with a lawyer. I told her that the paperwork were almost ready. I want 50/50 custody of Lily. A fair distribution of assets. I want things to be as pleasant as possible for Lily's sake, if nothing else. I thought I was ready for her reaction. I was not Christy. She utterly fell apart. She began hyperventilating, gasping for breath in between tears. Her face became pale, then flushed. Then she begged me not to do this, not to throw away 14 years of marriage. She swore to do whatever to make things right. She said she would go to additional therapy, give me full access to her phone and email, and even move out if I needed it. She insisted she couldn't lose me. We could not lose our family. Then events took a turn. Christy began gripping her chest, claiming she could not breathe. Her lips were going bluish. Panic attack. I thought at first, but it only got worse. She collapsed, gasping for breath. I dialed 911. The wait for the ambulance felt like an eternity. I held her hand and told her to breathe, all the while wondering, is this my fault? Did I do this to her? We passed the night in the air. They claimed that if we hadn't detected the severe panic attack in time, it could have escalated into something worse. They wanted to keep her for observation to ensure there was no heart damage. Sitting in that sterile hospital room, watching Christy sleep while hooked up to all those machines, I felt like the world's largest asshole. But even in that moment, I felt guilty as hell. I knew I couldn't turn back from my decision. Because as much as it hurt to see Christy like this, the prospect of returning to our damaged marriage hurt far more. The next morning, after Christy had stabilized, she asked me to reconsider. I suggested we try a separation first to see if some time apart would help. She even proposed that I take the work trip to the Netherlands. I had been putting off extending it for some weeks. I agreed to the trip primarily out of remorse. I figured some time away would help clear my brain. Allow us both some space to consider Dot. So a week later, I was on a flight to Amsterdam. The idea was to stay for 2 weeks. One for business and one for, so I suppose you could call it soul-searching. Those 2 weeks were weird and liberating in a way. For the first time in a year, I was able to breathe without feeling a weight on my chest. I thought about Christy, our marriage, and Lily. I tried to picture a world in which we could move beyond this, but every time I tried, I hit a wall. I had lost trust and had no idea how to regain it. Halfway during the second week, I received a call from Christy. She sounded strange, determined nearly. She had a proposition for me, Dot. She mentioned a solution to save our marriage. She recommended a one-sided, open marriage. I said I could do whatever I wanted while in Amsterdam. There were no questions asked, no judgments passed if it would make us or even help me forgive her. She was open to trying it. I'm not sure how to convey how surprised, repulsed, and tempted I felt for a tiny, horrific minute, Dot. But basically, I felt sad. Sad that we'd gotten to the point where she thought me sleeping with someone else would mend our relationship. I told her no, explained that it was not about settling the score or exacting revenge. Sleeping with someone else would not change this. If anything, it would merely add another layer of complication, a new source of shame and bitterness, Dot. She did not take it well. She started crying and said she didn't know what else to do. How else can problems be fixed? I wasn't sure what to say. What can I say? So I just listened. I became increasingly confident that I had made the correct decision. Following that call, I decided to extend my stay. I told work that I needed some personal time and went to stay with my sister, who lives just outside Amsterdam. Being away from the daily reminders of our failed marriage allowed me to feel more like myself. I slept better, laughed more, and even started working out again, something I had ignored for the previous year. My sister observed a shift. "You appear happier," she commented one evening over supper. "More calm, similar to the old you." And you know what? She was correct. I felt happier, more like myself. And that revelation devastated my heart all over again because I understood what it meant. I contacted Christy, told her I was coming home and that we needed to talk. She must have detected something in my voice because she didn't protest or try to extend my stay. Instead, she simply responded okay and stated she'd wait. My flight home was the longest 9 hours of my life. I kept practicing what I was going to say and how I was going to explain, but I realized I didn't need to. As soon as I went through the door, I knew Christy would crumple at the sight of me. She knew too. It was over for Christy. She did not take it well. At first, she was strangely quiet, even resigned. But as I continued talking, she began screaming, crying, throwing things, and calling me. Every name in the book accused me of never truly loved her and of using it as an excuse to abandon her. What could I say as I stood there, soaking it all in? How could I protect myself against her pain and anger? In that moment, I despised myself almost as much as she did me. But then, in the midst of her rant, Lily stepped in, our precious, innocent little girl standing in her pajamas, tears flowing down her cheeks as she saw her parents fall apart. That sight was like a bucket of icy water. We both paused, immediately conscious of the devastation we were causing. Christy dashed to Lily, scooping her up in her arms and muttering apologies and reassurances. I stood there powerless, watching my family fall and knowing I was to blame. One afternoon, I was half-heartedly attempting to assist Lily with her homework. She glanced up at me with those large brown eyes and remarked, "Daddy, you seem happier now." Like before those remarks, they struck me because she was correct. Despite the guilt and sorrow of watching my marriage disintegrate, I felt better, lighter, and more like myself than I had in over a year. And at that moment, I knew. I knew I was making the correct decision. As awful as it was, Lily deserved happy parents, regardless of whether they were together. She deserved to grow up in a loving and trusting environment, rather than one filled with hatred and distrust. That night, I had another calmer conversation with Christy, this time informing her about the lawyer and the divorce papers that were due to be filed. Christy listened silently, tears running down her cheeks. When I finished, she simply nodded. "I understand," she replied. "I don't like it and I disagree with it, but I can understand." We spent the next several hours working out the details. Lily's custody is split 50/50, which is a fair division of assets. I would stay at home for the time being to minimize disruption. For Lily, Christy would live with her parents until she found a place of her own. It was all extremely respectful and mature, and it shattered my heart all over again because this was it. This was the end of us, of the life we had created together. But it was also the start of something new, an opportunity for both of us to rediscover happiness. Even if it wasn't with each other. The next morning, I called my lawyer and instructed him to file the paperwork. It was finished. We were getting divorced, but life is rarely that straightforward, is it? Lisa called me frantic a few days after I had filed the paperwork. Yes, the same Lisa who told me about Christy's adultery in the beginning. Christy discovered that Lisa had spilled the beans, and she was not pleased. Lisa was in tears, explaining that Christy had been sending her frightening texts, calling her at all hours, and leaving voicemails filled with insults and threats. She was afraid, she said, terrified that Christy would do something crazy. I tried to calm Lisa down by telling her I'd talked to Christy, but when I asked Christy about it, she exploded, raving about how Lisa had ruined her life and destroyed our family. She was like a woman possessed. Nothing resembled the Christy I'd known for 14 years. I was able to talk her down, but the experience left me shaken. This was not the Christy I knew. This was someone else completely, someone unexpected and maybe harmful. I called Lisa back and begged her not to press charges. The last thing I wanted was Lily to witness her mother's incarceration. Lisa consented, happily, but made it obvious that she wanted nothing else to do with either of us. I can't really blame her. In an attempt to cleanse her conscience, she launched a shitstorm that none of us were prepared for. Christy's mood swings were worsening. She'd be pleading with me to reconsider, and then she'd start screaming accusations and insults. I began to worry about her mental state and what she would do. I advised she see someone for assistance. She did not take it well. She accused me of attempting to make her look crazy, attempting to take Lily from her. It took hours to calm her down and convince her that I was not trying to deceive her. Eventually, she consented to see a therapist. I hoped it would help, that it would restore some semblance of the Christy I knew, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease, the fear that things would worsen before improving, and I threw it all away. There was Lily, precious, innocent Lily, caught in the midst of her parents' chaos. I tried to protect her from the worst of it, but kids are smart. You know? She sensed something was wrong, but she wasn't sure what. One night, as I was tucking her into bed, she asked me a question that broke my heart again. "Daddy," she spoke softly, her voice trembling. "Is it my fault that you and your mother are fighting God? How do you respond to that? How do you tell a 7-year-old that sometimes love isn't enough, that two people who love each other cannot always be together?" I held her close and told her repeatedly that it was not her fault that Mommy and Daddy loved her more than anything else in the world, and that this would never change. I do not know if she believed me. I'm not certain I believed myself. Update 2. Some of you warned me that things could get worse before they get better. Well, you were correct. Boy, were you correct. The divorce has been finalized for around 3 months. The first arrangement was 50/50th custody. But Christy hasn't been doing well. More on that in a moment. Things appear to be settling into a new normal. Christy moved out and got a little apartment close to our old house. We were polite, even cordial at times, particularly during child handoffs. Lily was adjusting better than we expected. I began to believe that we had dodged a bullet and would be one of the few couples who could divorce amicably. Then I met somebody. It wasn't planned, I wasn't even looking, to be honest. But there she was, Naomi. There's a new client at work. Smart, funny, beautiful. We hit it off right away but kept things professional. Then, one day, after a particularly tense meeting, she recommended we get some coffee. Coffee transformed into supper. Dinner went into drinks. You can guess the rest. I hadn't felt this alive for years. I knew I needed to be careful for Lily's sake. I didn't want to introduce her to someone new so soon. So Naomi and I kept it low-key casual. But wow, it felt nice to grin, laugh, and feel that connection again. I've been seeing Naomi for almost a month now. Christy found out. I still do not know how. Perhaps she spotted us together. Perhaps Lily said something innocent to tip her off. Whatever happened, all hell broke loose. It began with a flood of texts, ugly stuff, calling me every name in the book, accusing me of infidelity, of orchestrating this all along. Then followed the phone calls, day and night, and her number appeared on my screen. I tried to reason with her, explaining that we were divorced and that I had every right to move on, but she didn't hear it. Then she began showing up at my house, first simply sitting in her car outside, observing, and then knocking on the door at odd hours, asking to speak. One night, she arrived inebriated, yelling and knocking on the door. I had to contact the cops, but things got worse. One evening, I went out with Naomi. We'd just finished supper and were headed back to her car when I noticed a familiar figure loitering nearby. Christy. She must have followed us. Before I could react, she went over and began yelling at Naomi, calling her a homewrecker and claiming she had damaged our family. I tried to intercede to calm Christy down, but she acted like a woman possessed. She swung at Naomi, narrowly missing her face. I was able to go between them and tell Naomi to get in her car and leave as she drove away. Christy collapsed on the sidewalk and sobbed furiously. I wasn't sure what to do. I helped her up and drove her to her apartment. She cursed and begged me to return. The next day, I received a call from Lily's school. Christy had not picked her up. I hadn't called anything. I raced over and saw Lily sitting alone in the office, tears flowing down her cheeks. My heart broke again. I tried to call Christy. No response. Texted. Nothing. I started to panic. What if she did something stupid? What if she got hurt? I dropped Lily off at my parents' house and headed to Christy's apartment. Used the emergency key to get inside. The place was a mess. Clothes are everywhere. Empty bottles littered the floor. Christy had passed out in the bedroom. An empty medicine bottle sits near her. I've never been so afraid in my life. Called 911. I rode with her to the hospital. It turned out she had taken a bunch of sleeping drugs along with booze. Not enough to kill her, thankfully, but enough to place her in the psych institution for 72 hours of observation. The physicians diagnosed her with acute sadness and anxiety. Is inpatient treatment recommended? Christy agreed. Fortunately, I believe the shock was enough to make her realize she needed help. So here we are. Christy is in a treatment facility for at least the next month. Lily is currently staying with me full-time. Naomi concluded that this was too much drama for her. I cannot say I blame her. I'm trying to keep it together for Lily's sake, if nothing else. But wow, it is hard. I feel bad about moving on, although knowing I shouldn't I am worried sick about Christy, even if she is no longer my duty. I'm terrified of what this is doing to Lily. The custody status is currently up in the air. My lawyer claims I have a solid case for full custody, at least temporarily. I don't know what will happen next. I'm not sure if Christy will recover or accept that our relationship is finished. If she can co-parent with me. I'm not sure if I'll ever feel ready to try dating again after this catastrophe. If anyone out there has been through something similar, I would appreciate some advice. There is some hope that things will improve. Right now, from where I stand, it's difficult to see the light at the end of this very dark tunnel.